This is your literary performance challenge for week number 8. Begin. I would like, at this time, to explain to you what an opening statement is, period. An opening statement is a circumstance whereby an attorney stands up in front of a jury and explains to them what evidence he intends to introduce, explains to the jury what the issues might be, and also explains to the jury what, in fact, they may have to decide, period, paragraph. Now, this is more or less like a roadmap for you, as the jury, to follow as we introduce testimony and evidence so that it might make it easier for you to understand what we as attorneys are trying to do in this particular case, period, paragraph. Now, in fact, as we present the testimony and the evidence, the only other opportunity I will have to speak directly to you will be at the close of the case, when both I and Mr. Parks will make closing arguments, period. So, this is my one and only opportunity to kind of lay out the issues to you as to what I intend to prove, what I expect to prove, and what I think are important issues in this matter, period, paragraph. First of all, we have to remember that what I say in my opening statement and in my closing argument, is not evidence, period. I was not present at any of the events, period. I do not pretend to know from my own knowledge what happened, period. What I say is what I expect to prove, and what I argue to you is based on the facts and the evidence as you may recall them, period, paragraph. But the evidence in this particular case will not come from me, let me rephrase that sentence or restart that sentence. But the evidence in this particular case will come not from me, not from Mr. Parks, not from the judge, but from the witnesses on the witness stand who will be testifying under oath, period. And this is the evidence, and these are the facts that you will be asked to consider in reaching a conclusion, period. What I say to you is certainly not evidence, and it is only what I hope that I can prove to you, period. On November 15, 2005, Mr. Stanley Weber, who lived in Boston, was in fact in Boston in the middle of the afternoon, period. He was in Boston riding his motorcycle in the area of Ridge and Prince Avenue, period. The evidence will show that Mr. Weber was in the extreme left lane going toward a red light, period. The police officer involved in this case, Officer Adams, was on foot on the other side of the intersection, period, paragraph. While the plaintiff was stopped at the light, Officer Adams had signaled in his general direction, to either he or the vehicle next to him, to pull over to the side of the road, period, paragraph. Now, as the light turned green, Officer Adams proceeded to walk out into the middle of the street to try to get the plaintiff to pull over to the right-hand side of the street, period, paragraph. Mr. Weber will testify he was unable to pull over to the right because of the car that was beside him in the other lane, period. Suddenly, Mr. Weber realized that, in fact, Officer Adams had walked out directly in front of him, period, paragraph. Mr. Weber will testify that he was not sure whether or not Officer Adams wanted him or the car next to him, and rather than cause a collision, rather than run over Officer Adams, not being sure that the officer wanted him, for what, he did not know, Mr. Weber then turned his motorcycle to the left and kept going on his own way, period, paragraph. He continued on his own way for a short period of time, period. He pulled over in a place where he could wash his motorcycle, and at that point, he heard sirens, period. He was standing outside of his car wash when a police officer, about 15 minutes after the incident, pulled over to the car wash and started asking some questions, period, paragraph. As a result of those particular questions, Mr. Weber was arrested and taken into custody and taken down to the local police station, period. He was brought in at approximately 2:30 p.m., period. Paragraph. The evidence will show that after he was taken down to police headquarters, he was put into a room, period. He was completely alone in that particular room, period. Later on, several different police officers and detectives came into that room and asked him a lot of questions, period. The main question was why he had run over a police officer, or why, in fact, he had attempted to run over a police officer, period, paragraph. Mr. Weber will tell you that he became scared and he, in fact, did tell all three of the men that he never attempted to run down any police officer, period. As a result of his saying that, one of the detectives came around and kicked Mr. Weber in the back of the ribs or in the back of the chest, period. One of the other detectives in front of him began to punch him in the face, period. Later on, even Officer Adams came into the room and slapped him around at that particular time, period, paragraph. Mr. Weber will tell you in his evidence that when he felt what he felt at the time, period. He will also tell you that at the time another detective came by, looked into the room and said, quote, "You people have no business doing that up here, period. If you wanted to do that, you should have done it out on the street, period," close quote. And it was at that point that all of the detectives left the room, period.